Hey everybody, how's it going? I'm Marcus Prime and we are back with Intensive Scare Unit. Wait 1 second. Yo, spooky party people, I'm Marcus Prime and we are back with Intensive Scare Unit. Last time... Gotta turn this down real quick. Last time we saw through Angela Lim's storyline twice, basically. Well, Angela and Victoria Lim's storyline. Victoria was a tic-tac model, apparently. And Angela's mom, who was neglecting her. But Angela didn't know that Victoria was getting beat by the dad. So we'll go through it again. We're gonna kind of skip through these parts and get to the patients. I don't know what autosave that was, so I can't just go straight to it. But if you want to hear this story the parts of this story, check out my last stream where I went through Angela's storyline. Cool. Let's review the rooms though, at least. So I at least remember what rooms there were, because I mean, it's only been a day. Because I remember room 101, that's Angela. I still don't know what post-dengue shock syndrome is. I should have looked that up. Pediatric patients who deal with the parents mostly. I peered through the glass window of the room, seeing a tiny figure nestled in the bed. Her mom sitting anxiously beside her. Her mom looks familiar because her mom's the tic-tac model. Room 104 is Mrs. Silvina. We didn't see much of Mrs. Silvina last time because I kept going to room 101 mostly. Yeah, that's right. She's completely unconscious and she has liver cancer. Room 108 is the drug addict dude, Mr. X. Yep, there it is. I don't know why he can thrash so much. I'm still curious because usually I think they strap them down to the bed if they're any form of violent. I saw the straps myself. Well, I've never been strapped down, but I've seen them. Room 110 is Joko Moyono, who had his leg amputated. There's a lot in that storyline. I think we'll go with Moyono's storyline first, then we'll go back to Mr. X's. And then we'll check out those empty rooms. Or maybe I check out the empty rooms first because it could be nothing. I could go check out an empty room, it could be completely nothing at all. And that'd be a terrible way to end the stream. Satria also, I mean, if it's your first stream, spoilers, he's a ghost. But we found that out last stream. It does. Oh yeah, the nurse. The nurse is interesting. Only because she's so uninteresting. She kind of lacks life completely. Well, until later in the story. Okay. But then room 112. Let's check out the empty rooms first. Let's get that out of the way. A chill crept up my spine. That room was empty. No patient, no reason for that bell to ring. I turned to look at Satria, expecting him to react, but he just frowned and shook his head. The room is empty, right? Yeah, it is. Could be a glitch in the system. Happens sometimes. His casual tone didn't convince me, or him. Judging by the way he glanced down the hallway, my heart started to race as I stared into the darkness. You want me to check it out? Knock yourself out. If you see anything spooky, remember to scream so we can all run away. That's sound advice. He's looking out for himself and his team, but not for us. Great, just what I needed. A sarcastic senior in a haunted hospital. I approached room 112 like I was wading through thick fog. When I finally reached the door, I opened it as loudly as possible, almost shouting. Excuse me! The room was pitch black. Why does the pitch black room look so disarray? It's just an empty room. No big deal, just an empty, possibly haunted room. My hands fumbled for the light switch, and when I flicked it on, the lights turned on, revealing just an empty room. Absolutely nothing. The room was exactly as it should be, empty, sterile, and completely devoid of life. And yet the call bell was still ringing, even though there was no one there to press it. Holy shit. I quickly stepped back, slamming the door shut behind me. What's the problem? I hurried back to Satria, and he looked as unimpressed as ever, that bastard. Well, he didn't even bother looking up from his coffee. There's nothing there but the bell. The bell's still. Satria looked at me, his expression darkening just a bit. Just keep an eye on it. Sometimes these things happen. Or, you know, we could just pretend it didn't. Up to you. He didn't elaborate and I didn't ask. The shift's still a long way to go. Room 103, 101, 104. Not this again. Room 103 was completely empty. And utterly empty, so why the hell was the bell ringing? We know about those two. I glanced at the nurse who was still standing there, eerily mute, as if the chaos around us didn't even register. What the hell is going on with this night shift? Satria, my ever-reliable senior, just let out a sarcastic laugh. Well, it seems like there's a welcoming party for you. I'm gonna keep checking out those empty rooms, just to, get through this. Maybe there's more to it. I pressed the intercom button for room 103, not knowing what response I should have expected. Oddly enough, I was met with a soft, heart-wrenching crying of a young woman. Satria, can you come over here? I think we need to check this out. Satria shuffles over, a lazy smirk on his face that dropped the moment he heard the sobs echoing through the intercom. Oh, creepy. Can we check the room together? Or maybe we don't have to. We could just leave it the fuck alone. We could just say, hey, that's an empty room. There shouldn't be anyone crying in there. And it could just stay there because there's no one there. But what if someone really needs our help? Fine. Satria shot back, rolling his eyes. He followed me regardless. So, two sides of that is, it could just be someone dangerous, which we should check out because reasons. Just to make sure there's no one dangerous actually there. In this kind of environment, though, where we know someone should not be there, there should be security, making sure no one else is coming in. Well, then again, maybe someone needs help. Who knows? So we're gonna look at this empty-ass room. It's probably a ghost. As we approached the door, the crying intensified. I felt a tightening in my chest, but curiosity pulled me forward. I hesitated, my hand hovering over the doorknob as the crying suddenly stopped. Did you hear that? Yeah, but whatever it is, it's gone. Are you sure? Yeah. Anyway, on 3. Empty room. With a deep breath, we pushed the door open. I swore the room looked different just now. I scanned the room, half expecting to find someone curled up in the corner, but instead it was eerily empty. There was no crying, no sign of distress, just the sterile smell of antiseptic and the dim glow of the overhead lights. I glanced at Satria, who looked like a deer in headlights. Where's the crying coming from? Like I said, it's gone. Come on, let's head back. Maybe you need rest. Except the fact that he knows everything going on, basically. Because he's dead. As we stood there, I couldn't help but feel that something was very, very wrong. The crying had stopped, but I didn't think it was over. It was just the beginning of our shift. Feeling thirsty, I wandered into the doctor's lounge. Satria was right there, leaning against the counter while stirring 2 cups of coffee. He handed me one with a half smirk. He seems like a solid fellow. Much more solid than I thought he would be. Thanks. Hang in there, kid. This is just your first shift. Hey, this is what I signed up for. Easy for you to say. You're one of the blue bloods, aren't you? Everyone knows about you. What was it? Mom's a pediatrician, dad's a neurosurgeon. Yeah, but that doesn't mean it's a walk in the park. They're always comparing me to them, telling me how much harder I need to work. I don't even want to be a doctor anyway. Still, must be nice having parents who made things so much easier. Wish I had that kind of leg up. My family put everything into getting me here. Now it's on me to make sure it's worth it. I looked at him, really looked, and for a second I caught a glimpse of the weight he carried. Well, I guess we're both just trying not to mess it up. Yeah, something like that. I leaned back, taking a longer sip of my coffee, letting the silence sit for a bit. So, why'd you decide to be a doctor? Honestly, for my parents. It's not like I had some big passion for it or anything. They're not well off and, well, it felt like the only way to give back. Really? Yeah, I mean, they sacrificed so much to get me here. It's on me to make it count. Plus, they're not going to be able to help my sister much longer. I figured I could chip in with her uni loans when I'm out of residency, you know? That's heavy. Yeah, well, it's not like I can quit now. But why emergency medicine? All of the specialties you chose, the one where people are literally running in and out of nonstop. I didn't exactly choose it. It was the only one available through the scholarship I got. Had to take what I could. Oh, so this isn't your first choice? I mean, it's fine. I don't hate it or anything. But if I'm being honest, it was never really about what I wanted. It was about making sure I could get through med school without bankrupting my parents. Satchel stretched a bit before grabbing his things. Anyway, I better get back. The nurse seems inexperienced. Just before he left, he paused at the doorway and looked back at me. Residency's brutal, kid. There's still time to leave if you don't want to be here. Hang in there, okay? Before I could respond, he gave a small smile and disappeared down the hall. The clock struck midnight and the ICU erupted into chaos. Every damned bell on the intercom rang out like crazy. I turned to Satria, and his face was just as pale as mine. What's happening? I have no freaking idea. It's like the whole damn place is losing it. The ringing bells drowned out our voices, and I was struggling to speak. I felt the urge to run, but from what? From our helpless patients? Then I noticed the nurse, the one who hasn't spoken a word since we started. Is this a drill? First thing she ever says. Oh, so she was human after all. Thank God. A drill at this goddamn hour? The nurse took a step back, looking ready to faint. I don't know. I'm a new employee too. Nobody told me about this. Just press a button, huh? Just answer any intercom. Maybe it'll stop. Roger that. So let's go to an empty room again. Great, another empty room. Just let it be. It's not worth it. My heart raced as I pressed the intercom, hoping to hear something, but only silence answered me. Hello? No response, just an eerie silence again. I finally got to the empty room, reaching for the doorknob. An icy breeze brushed past me. Hi, woman. That's a weird laugh. That's not a laugh I would expect from a haunted woman. That sounded like crowd laughter number 5. Curiouser, do you want to play? Okay, nope, not doing this. I bolted down the hallway as fast as my legs could go. The sound of her laughter hot in my pursuit. You know, that's the proper response to before she even asks the question. Just leave. Leave and run. Whatever was haunting this place felt hungry, searching for something. Or someone. Oh gosh, she's not after me, is she? I ran out the corner in a full sprint, heart pounding, while I slammed straight into Satria, nearly knocking both of us over. Whoa, hey. No running in the hallways unless it's an emergency. Satria, there's something in the empty room. A woman, or I don't even know. But she was there, I swear. Oh, really? There was something off about him. Because he's a ghost. Satria, his smile was too stiff. His eyes were darker than usual in a way that didn't belong in the light. His smile didn't reach his eyes, and for a moment I could swear the hallway lights dimmed around him. You saw her too, didn't you? Maybe I did. Maybe I didn't. What does it matter? I didn't know what terrified me more, what I saw in that empty room or the strange way Satria was acting. Something wasn't right. Maybe you should get back to work, Leah. Things get strange around here after midnight. Yeah, you're right. Okay, so is he becoming evil the more we look into empty rooms? I walked toward the nurse station again, not sure if I was more afraid of the ghost or Satria at the moment. Why is the nurse station so dark? I was relieved to see the nurse standing there, eyes glued on the monitor. Hey, you won't believe what I just saw. The empty rooms? Best you ignore it. So you knew? I know the hospital's been here since the Dutch colonial times. What does that have to do with anything? Back then it was a military infirmary. There was a widow who lost her husband during the war. People say she never left, still wandering the halls looking for him. Oh. Yeah, if you keep entertaining her, she'll take a liking to you, you know? And not the let's grab coffee kind of like, more like haunt you forever like. Great, just what I needed. Spooky. Awesome. Suddenly every shadow in the corner felt like it was watching me. I might have made a big mistake. 3 bells rang out at once. All right, we're gonna check out room 105 because we're not checking out the other stories. We'll go with all those completely later. Because, well, we've done Angela's, so next time we do Mr. X. The intercom buzzed again with no one answering it. My heart raced as I reluctantly made my way toward the empty room. Not really an empty room. Satria is cute. I don't know if that's an unpopular opinion, actually. I've made note of this. He's got that attractive kind of bad boyish look on him for being an ICU doctor or resident. When I pushed the door open, I was taken aback. A ghost woman stood there looking strangely serene, dressed in a beautiful kabaya that flowed like smoke around her. Oh, so you've come. My name is Gendiz. You're quite the odd one, aren't you? I'm Leah. Are you a ghost? She laughed, a sound that sent chills down my spine. Obviously. Most people would run away from what they see, but you linger. You're curious. Perhaps a bit too curious for your own good. Curiosity did kill the cat. Why do you keep ringing the bell? What do you want from me? I want nothing from you, dear. Before I could respond, the air grew heavy, and the lights flickered ominously. My instinct screamed at me to run, but my legs were glued to the floor. You're supposed to be here during the night shift. You're not supposed to be here during the night shift. Neither is your friend. Basically everyone is dead here. Except for, well, no. Angela, Victoria, and Mr. Magnono are alive. I'm still on the fence for the night nurse, but Satria Gendiz, whatever that ghost is, haunting Mr. X, because Mr. X is also still alive. Mr. Mondoyo's wife, and whatever that kid ghost is that's haunting Angela. But it does seem like it is testing virtue. Where was it? This place is a threshold, and it's an in-between. The ICU holds souls teetering between life and death, and sometimes they choose to stay. Stay? Do you mean I'm dead? No, which is why you're not supposed to be here. Your shift is tomorrow. What? The souls linger here, caught in their regrets and sorrows. They can become restless, searching for closure. So, we came to our shift a day early. And I am here watching over them, watching over you. Satria is your friend, but he too is drawn to this darkness. Girl, you feel deeply, more than others. Maybe that is why you're here now. The weight of sorrow clings to you. I've seen it, and I've seen how it affects those who wander here. You must remember that not all souls are benevolent. Some may wish to pull you down with them. With that, she turned away, her figure slowly dissipating into the shadows, leaving me alone. Leah. Oh, it's just you, Satria. I turned around, startled to find Satria standing behind me. I just talked to a ghost named Gendiz. She told me I'm not supposed to be on this shift. I'm mixed it up somehow. Crazy, right? Yes, your shift is supposed to be tomorrow. But then... Whoa, that was odd. Satria's expression darkened as his head began to twitch erratically. Tonight we're walking a line between reality and something far more dangerous. I think she was just trying to warn you. Warn me from what? Satria smiled, a sad, warm smile that ironically sent a chill down my spine. He's not looking so cute anymore. That one. I mean, the other one's, he's close, is still fine, but yeah. But as I stepped back, the warmth faded. Oh, that does not look good. He looks not good now. His figure began to shift and distort, revealing bloodied skin, battered limbs, and bruises that painted a horrific picture. I could see the ribs poking from his emaciated frame, the once comforting presence now a grotesque vision. Satria, what's happened to you? Go home. This is not your place. You belonged with the living. As reality of his words sank in, the world around me began to spin. I also remember I have voice effects. My vision blurred and the room darkened. The last thing I saw was the haunting look on his face before everything faded to black. I passed out. The next day, I found myself in a familiar chaos of the hospital, the bright lights flickering above me as I made my way to my actual shift. My mind was still reeling from the events of the night before, questioning whether it had all been a nightmare or something much darker. As I walked past the nurse's station, I spotted the nurse from yesterday. Okay, so she's alive, I think. She looked up and offered a sympathetic smile. Oh, hey, sorry for your loss. Excuse me? Haven't you heard one of the senior residents passed away? We're running on a skeleton crew today because there's a funeral happening. Funeral? What was his name? Satria? My heart raced as I processed the nurse's words. Satria's funeral? No, that couldn't be right. I was sure I'd just seen him the last night. We were working on a shift together. But he never made it here. He was in a bad accident before going to his shift. No, I spoke to him. But the words caught in my throat and the room around me began to spin. My mind raced back to the night before, to the vision of Satria bloodied and bruised, warning me to leave while I still could. Had I truly been awake? I like that the ghost lady turned like no longer haunted looking. And Satria is now just a corpse, I guess. For a brief moment, I thought I saw Gendy standing in the doorway. I blinked hard and she was gone. So she's actually a good person to be friends with. Hey, what's wrong? Nothing. Hey, take a deep breath, new resident. It's your first shift. You're under a lot of stress. Yeah, maybe that's what this is. Yeah. Stress. As the weeks passed, I struggled with the news of Satria's death. It felt surreal, like a bad dream I couldn't wake up from. I wish I could have asked him what happened during his last shift. I focused on my work as a doctor, and each day I reminded myself of Gendy's words to care and feel deeply. Even though I never saw Gendy's or Satria again, I felt their spirit in the small moments. When a patient smiled or a family member said thank you, it reminded me of why I chose this path in the first place. I often looked out the window, hoping to understand what happened that night, but I realized I needed to let it go. Maybe he just needed to finish his shift one last time. This is a special ending. Okay, neat. Got a lot more understanding of like what's happening in this intensive scare unit. Yeah, pretty shite. Okay, I don't know. Yeah, I still don't know what automatic save I could use. So we'll just have to skip ahead. I don't even know if I can just save. Oh, skip. These are not things I want to skip. Yeah, normally they have like skip stuff you've seen already. Like we could just like hit a button to skip it all. And I'll go directly to stuff we haven't seen or to a choice. That's one thing I miss in usual visual novels. That was a really bad ending for Satria. Because in the other endings we saw that he goes into the light. But I'm glad I know now. Mr. X and his opium addiction. For this one, we'll go with Mr. X's. Actually, no, I'll do Mr. X last. I'm very curious about Mr. Mondoyo. Seeing what he's got to offer us today. Nurse didn't respond. Instead, she just stared at me with vacant eyes and nodded. It's as if she was too tired or overwhelmed to offer any kind of greeting. Alright then, I'll be around if you need anything. Okay. We're just gonna go right to the bells. Once the bells ring, there we go. We can make our choices. As we go... Oh shoot, I was going Mondoyo. I will go with Mr. X first. Good evening, sir. It's Dr. Leah. What's going on in there? A long, unsettling silence followed, broken only by the humming of ventilators. Wait. Oh yeah, there you go. There's Mr. X. The ventilators made me think we were going to room 104. There's nothing under your skin. You're just experiencing a symptom of your condition. Yeah, because he has that whole thing where he feels like someone's clawing out of him. I'm curious about liver cancer lady. I should have let Satria take this one. Mr. X was thrashing violently, face contorted in agony. His hands were clawing at his own skin, scratches covering his arms where he'd tried to dig whatever he believed was inside him. Please get her out. I can't take it anymore. Gulp. I'm going to sedate you, sir. It'll help with the pain, but you have to let go, all right? As I reached for a syringe, he grabbed my wrist with surprising strength. Let go. Let go? She's in me. Her nails are cutting through. She's going to crawl out of me and into you. She'll tear us all apart. His grip tightened, and for a moment, I could almost feel it. A sharp, cold scratch just beneath my own skin, like nails dragging through flesh. My stomach turned, but I forced myself to stay calm. I had to. It was just a delusion. It's just the drugs. It's just paranoia. I injected the sedative into his IV, and Mr. X's breathing slowed, his thrashing subsiding, as the sedative took effect. But even his eyes fluttered shut. He kept whispering to himself. She's coming. I mean, sometimes people have to come. I backed out of the room, trying to calm my trembling hands. But then, as I started down the hallway, something stopped me in my tracks. It was at first a soft melodic hum that seemed to drift through stillness. Who the heck is singing at this hour? I paused, my ears straining to catch it. The sound grew clearer, and my blood ran cold. A pissant hen was singing. Pissant hen? Her voice was haunting, laced with a sorrow that seeped into my bones. And as if that wasn't enough, there was a distant clink of a gamelan orchestra began to play along with her. What the hell's going on? It was coming from Mr. X's room. It couldn't be his phone or TV. The peasant end's voice was so clear. It was like she was standing right behind me, singing directly into my ear. I half expected to feel her cold breath on my neck. She's coming. And then just like that, the music cut off. Everything fell into silence so thick it was suffocating. Maybe I had too much coffee. That's it. I rushed back into the nurse station, trying to shake off whatever just happened. I stood at the nurse's station again when the bells for room 101, room 103, and room 104 all started ringing at once. Not this again. 103 was completely empty and utterly empty, so why the hell was the bell ringing? Mrs. Salvina, who was unconscious and paraplegic. She couldn't ring the bell even if she wanted to. We're gonna do Mrs. Salvina because that's the only choice we have that we're not ignoring anymore. There's Satria, who might be missing a thumb. Well, it seems like there's a welcome party for you. I remember one of those times last time I just forgot to click something, or it took too long. We skipped something, so I think we'll get a lot more done today. Hello, Mrs. Salvina. No answer. I quickly rushed to room 104. I pushed the door open and the room was dark. As I turned on the lights, I saw a cup of tea laying in pieces. There was no one else in the room but Mrs. Salvina, who was unconscious in her bed, oblivious to the mess. Jesus Christ, seriously? I crouched down to inspect the shards of glass, looking at for any sign of how the cup had ended up on the floor. There was no obvious cause, no one to knock it over, no sudden movement that could have sent it crashing. It was as if it had just decided to jump off the table of sheer spite. Okay, focus. It's just a cup, just a cup. Of course, there was no cleaning service in sight, which meant I was the one in charge of cleaning it. As I moved to clean up the mess, I felt a shiver down my spine. I couldn't help but glance at the window, half expecting to see something or someone watching me from outside. And to Mrs. Salvina, thinking she could just jolt awake at any moment. I wonder if it's Gendy's. Hold it together, Leah. I quickly gathered the pieces of the cup and turned to leave. Spooky. But before I could reach the door, I thought I heard a faint whisper, just a breath of sound like a warning. I froze, my heart racing as I glanced back at Mrs. Selby. She remained still, her breath steady but shallow. As if this night couldn't get any weirder. I quickly left the room, huffing to myself. What's she huffing? Okay, the doctor's lounge is always the same. It's more of Leah's backstory, where she's rich and Satria grew up poor. Not blaming Satria or anything. It's just how things are. And he's telling her how brutal it is. We're gonna keep going. You know, we'll go with Mrs. Salvina because she's only in that second round, and then this round. I do want to see Mr. X's, but I kind of want to do that one later. I don't want to accidentally click an intercom. So I was going a little slow there. I pressed the intercom button to hear a low scratching sound echoing through the speaker like nails raking against wood. Hello? Are you there? No answer, just more scratching. As if there was a cat on the other end, basically. Or someone trying to get out of a coffin. I hurried to room 104, bringing a broom with me for no apparent reason. You know, you do something weird things when you panic. I pushed the door open and there she was, Mrs. Selvey, still unconscious in her bed. But then I saw the walls. Scratch marks crisscross the surface as if something had been trying to claw their way out. I moved closer, the sound of scratching growing louder in my ears. What the hell? I reached out to touch the wall, feeling the rough texture of the scratch beneath my fingertips, then I blinked. In an instant, the marks and everything else vanished, as if it was just a dream. But the sound was still here for some reason. It sounds like something tiny just tumbling across the floor. Leah? She moved so fast, the wind whooshed. Holy crap! She moves as fast as a kung fu fighter. Just whoosh. I swung the broom at him, almost hitting him in the face. Oh, that's the sound. Whoa! Easy there. I think my aunts are here. Satria, what are you doing here? The nurse station monitor was beeping. Her vitals are dropping. I glanced at the monitors and he was right. When she crashes, get ready. The scratching, did you hear it too? When you entered? Oh yeah. Souls that are about to die start wandering, so, you know, searching for something or someone. But hey, we're all just passing through, right? At those words, I felt a shiver run through me. It felt like his face darkened as if he wasn't really there. Okay, so is the Angela one the only one where Satria is good? Satria? It's nothing. Let's keep an eye on Mrs. Selby. I stepped back and left the room with Satria. His words kept ringing in my ears as if an omen. Okay, so out of these rooms, room 101 and 105 have... Oh, room 101's Angela. Okay. We'll go 105 and just keep on the story. This one I think we'll probably just get back to what's her name? Gendy's story start. Yeah. Yeah, this is the beginning branch of Gendy's story, so we can just get through this. I heard back to Satria and he looked impressed as ever. How come we don't get much more room 104? We'll go back to the empty room thing. Okay, now we're back into Sylvina's story. Let's. The intercom crackled with a barely inaudible voice that sent a chill down my spine. Sorry, that threw me off. Barely inaudible. I think it should be barely audible because you could barely hear it. Or you barely can't hear it. I guess that makes sense too. My time is over. I froze for a second. I guess both would mean the same. It just weirdly phrased to me. I froze for a second. Mrs. Selvey? No, she was unconscious. It couldn't have been her, right? Except maybe it is because there's ghosts all over the place. And she's wandering now. My heart pounded in my chest as I rushed down the hall, flinging the door open. Oi! That kind of got me. A figure lunged toward me, Mrs. Sully, but not quite. Her pale face twisted in a grotesque grin, her head tilting to the side as if it's broken. I gasped, stumbling back, nearly losing my balance. Yeah, she needs to go. She needs to go to the other side, I think. No, we can't because her family's not here, so we have to keep resuscitating until we get a DNR. My heart hammered, but before I could catch my breath, she was gone. Or she's just dead. That could be the thing that happens too. At the very moment, the monitor flatlined. No. Do your job, resident. I slammed the emergency button as I probed her carotid artery, desperate for a pulse. Satria, nurse, code blue. Without thinking, I started chest compressions. Her hands trembled, but I pressed down harder. Not long after Satria burst in, the nurse right behind him. Damn, why must it be tonight? Is tonight a bad night, Satria? Is that why you don't want to pass this night? Doc, you look tired. Let me take over. Leah prepared the EPI. Or the Epi. Epi? I guess an EpiPen would work. But why an EpiPen? Roger that. The ghostly presence of Mrs. Selvey, or whatever it was, lingered in the back of my mind. We kept working, time slipping away, adrenaline kept keeping us moving. Because I think they would prepare an adrenaline shot or something. Satria's face was grim, the nurse's eyes wide as they exchanged a look that sent a fresh wave of fear through me. That's enough. She's gone. Time of death. The air in the room thickened and froze over, curdling into a suffocating tension. It was as if someone was watching, waiting, ready to pounce out at any moment. The room was eerily silent now, except for the faint sound of the heart monitor's flatline, which was still ringing in my ears. Mrs. Selvey was gone. Satria had already left to write down the death certificate, leaving the nurse and I to prepare her body for the morgue. We tried not to think too much. We just wanted to finish our job as fast as possible. But then I heard it. Faint sobbing. At first I thought it was my own nerves playing tricks on me, but then I glanced at the nurse, her eyes wide, mouth agape. She heard it too. Did you hear that? Yeah. We tried to ignore it, focusing on our task, but the sound wouldn't stop. The sobbing grew louder, echoing through the small ward. It felt like it was coming from everywhere, nowhere all at once. As I reached to adjust Mrs. Selvey's sheet, something caught my eye, a small crumpled photo peeking out of her gown. I gently pulled it out, smoothing the edges, and it was a picture of her The two younger adults, likely her children, smiling, happy. Why weren't they here to say goodbye? I stood there for a moment, frozen, clutching the photo. I couldn't leave it. Not here, not with her. In the cold of the morgue. They weren't here, probably because visiting hours are over. I don't know who can actually stay late at night, though. I don't know if her kids would be able to. Let's give it back to her family later. The nurse nodded, her eyes distant, the sobbing still haunting the air as we finished. The room's eerie silence pressed in on us again as we moved her body out. I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was still crying. Was it Mrs. Selby's spirit? The bell's ringing again. Interesting. We'll do an empty room. Yep, this is the Nope out, running into Satria. And then him being creepy as fuck. Stop being creepy, Satria. It's kind of weird. Kind of awkward. Is that all the story is for Mrs. Salvina? Oh, this is new. Mrs. X, with his wild eyes and disheveled hair, burst out, throwing away all of his metal equipment as if it were poison. She's after me. Satra, we have to stop him. We chased after him, but he was too fast, too frantic. I have to run. I can make it. He bolted into an empty room, and before I could reach him, he lunged for the window. Sir, this is the 5th floor. He jumped, and I felt time stretch as I watched him fall. The sickening thud echoed through the halls, and the air filled with the haunting sound of gamelan and peasant songs. An eerie lullaby that seemed to mock the tragedy. I stood frozen, my heart pounding when a woman's laughter pierced through the haunting melody. That's not how room numbers work exactly. It was as if coming from the very depths of hell. No. Because, mostly in any kind of architecture. Well, let's get through this first, I'll talk about it. The sight of his lifeless body sprawled on the ground below broke something inside me. My vision blurred and the world around me spun as I sank to the floor, darkness closing in. Then suddenly I was awake in my work attire, my heart racing in my own bedroom. Wait, where am I? The familiar walls surrounded me, and the night shift felt like a distant nightmare. I blinked, disoriented for a moment. I couldn't shake the feeling that it had all been real. I checked my phone, and it's the day before the night shift. It was supposed to be tomorrow. What the hell? I frantically turned the TV on, and there it was on the news. Tragic news from the city hospital. Ganendra Sanjaya, the once prominent CEO, has jumped to his death from this hospital building. Sources say he was struggling with overwhelming debt from online loans, a situation he found himself entangled in after a series of poor financial decisions. My stomach twisted as the screen flashed images of him smiling with a woman who looked like the peasant hen woman. He looked so happy, so full of life. Now that joy was gone, leaving behind nothing but despair. Witnesses reported hearing strange sounds coming from the hospital moments before the incident. Authorities are investigating the circumstances surrounding his death. I stared at the screen frozen. The laughter, the singing, it all came flooding back. I felt sick. Was this all connected to the night I had spent at the hospital? As the news continued, I couldn't shake the feeling that the nightmare wasn't truly over. Mr. X dies. Selvey epilogue. Okay. Weird. I guess we could do kind of two things with Mrs. Selvey. But at least we get her epilogue. I had a dream right after the night shift. Unless that's just all what happens with Mrs. Selvey now. Also, I don't know why they dropped off the NA from Mrs. Selvey. Mrs. Selvey was standing in front of me. She looked like just as she did in life, but there was a glow about her that made her seem almost ethereal. Doctor, thank you for trying your best, for tending to me until I died. Oh, Mrs. Selvey, I wish I could have done more. You did more than you know. but there's something I need you to do for me. Please tell my children and grandchildren that I love them. I was afraid they wouldn't forget me. They've been so busy with their lives, and I never wanted to be a burden to them. Give them that picture you took. I promise. Thank you, doctor. I quickly went to the hospital and rushed to the dimly lit morgue. Mrs. Selby's family must have been called by now. I caught sight of the two figures huddled together in the corner. They must be Mrs. Selby's children. I'm Leah, the ICU doctor who took care of your mom. We came as soon as we heard the news. We didn't know that she had passed. I'm sorry for your loss. She wanted me to give you this. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the crumpled picture I had found. A photo of a younger Mrs. Selby with her children. The older sibling took it, eyes welling with tears. I can't believe we missed our chance to say goodbye. We didn't even know she was sick. She always said she was fine. We thought we had more time. I should have called more often. I should have just flown back, no matter what. They began to sob quietly. My throat tightened as I watched them grieve. Maybe I could convey Mrs. Selby's message to them. When she was still able, she wanted to tell you how much she loved you. She was scared of being a burden, but she never stopped caring about you. Thank you for bringing us this, doctor. We'll make sure she's remembered. Yes, I'm sure she'd want that. I left them to grieve their mother, struggling against the weight on my chest, which wrapped around me like a dense shroud. Okay. Pretty sad. Kind of wish Miss Selby could have lived. Or her children actually showed up earlier. I guess I had no idea. But now we'll do the Mr. X stuff. And hopefully he doesn't die this time. Maybe it's because I talked to him once. But that didn't happen the first nights. So maybe it's a combo of... No, or maybe it's just part of Mrs. Selby's storyline that he dies. Alright, we're gonna click through right up to the ringing of the bells. Alright, we're gonna combo Mr. Mondoyo and Mrs. Selby, because I think we can do that. Because it seems like they kind of go back and forth. But we're going to take Mr. Mondoyo more so that we can get his ending. Although his didn't seem to ring that often. I remember it being Mr. Joko Mulyono. Oh, Mulyono, that's his name. Room. The elderly man who recently had his leg amputated. Satria said he was one of the more stable patients, or at least he had been. Hello? His wife's voice crackled through the speaker, soft but urgent. Excuse me, nurse. My husband has a fever. He's not resting well. I'll be right there. As I entered, the first thing I noticed was how warm the room felt. Stuffy almost. Mr. Mulyono was in bed, his face flushed and profusely sweating. He was asleep, but his body was restless, twitching as if something was bothering him, even in his dreams. Even her art is kind of different. Like, her outline is not black. Like Mr. Mulyono, Leah's, she kind of has a gray outline. Please go ahead, doctor. I checked his temperature, definitely a fever, nothing too alarming, but enough to need attention. I reached into my pocket and pulled out a vial of paracetamol, preparing to administer it. This will get the fever under control. As I injected the medicine into his IV, I felt the presence of his wife hovering next to me. Mrs. Mulyono seemed like a sweet elderly woman, the kind who reminded you of homemade cookies and knitting by the fireplace. But tonight something felt off. Maybe it was just my imagination, though. Thank you, doctor. I glanced up, meeting her eyes. She was smiling, a kind, grandmotherly smile. There was something strange behind it that I couldn't quite put my finger on. Well, maybe she's just worried about her husband. Of course. He should get better soon. You're very kind, doctor. We're so grateful for everything you're doing. Just doing my job, ma'am. Is there anything else you need? No. He's tired, dear. So very tired. Pardon? She didn't respond immediately. Instead, she just kept that unnerving smile fixed on me, her eyes boring into mine. I checked Mr. Moliono's vitals one last time, my hands shaking slightly. His fever was starting to come down, and he seemed to be slipping into a more peaceful sleep, but the room still felt too suffocating. I still think that Mrs. Moliono wants him to die and join her, but then again, she's making sure he's being taken care of. He should be fine now. Just let me know if anything changes. Mrs. Moliono said nothing, just nodding silently as I turned to leave. Either that or she's making sure he's comfortable. I could feel her gaze burning into my back, that eerie smile still hanging in the air. Door clicked behind me and I exhaled a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. What's wrong with this, my first shift? Because you're not supposed to be here. I rushed back into the nurse station, trying to shake off whatever just happened. Okay, 101, 103, 104. I'm curious what happens if we mix her with Sylvina. But we'll skip through Sylvina's parts, since we literally just went through it. I do like how they did the sound effects and the art for this game. This is a well-written game too. This is why you hire a story writer alongside with a dev and then someone that does art. Okay, we're going to 110 for this one. Because this is the midnight, everything goes nuts. Bell ringing thing. I pressed the intercom button on room 110. Room 110, what's going on? My husband is in pain, doctor. Please come immediately. I hurried to room 110 where Mr. Moliono lay in bed, his face contorted in agony, beads of sweat glistening on his forehead. He's not fully conscious yet. I rushed to his side and quickly checked his vitals. Hang in there. Sir, I'm going to give you something for the pain. Oh, thank goodness you arrived quickly. Yes, ma'am. As I administered the medication, I noticed something. Mrs. Moliono stood at the foot of the bed, a serene smile on her face. But her feet weren't touching the ground. I wanted to scream, but my body froze, and my hand was still administering the meds. I quickly finished my job, and God damned it, the syringe fell to the floor. As I bent down to retrieve it, I was face to face with her feet. I wasn't dreaming. She was just standing there. She was floating. We know she's a ghost. The meds are in his system now. He should be all right. I'm just gonna go now. Her smile widened. Did you leave because you're done? Or because you've noticed? Me. She kind of looks like the Joker. She's giving me like Ghost Joker grandma vibes. The room felt a lot colder and its shadows deepened in the corners as if they were reaching out to grasp me. Somehow there were cracks in the walls. Couldn't move a muscle. Mrs. Moliono, I think you should stop floating and sit down. Do you see me? Pretend it's not there. Just like the game from last night, pretend it's not there. Panic surged through me and I turned to the door, desperate to escape. I have to go. Sprint! Sprint, young lady! Get the fuck out of there! With one last frantic glance at Mr. Moliono, whose pained expression mirrored my own horror, I bolted from the room and slammed the door shut behind me. As I stumbled back into the oddly darkened hallway, I suddenly heard it, a soft whispering voice that sent chills racing down my spine. Mrs. Molyono is a ghost! Or better with the Hanna-Barbera style, is the ghost. Now she has black outlines? Is it because she's evil? You should know. One of you is just like me. Creepy? Creepy Joker lady? I don't think anyone else is like a creepy Joker here. The darkness hides secrets, my dear. One of you is pretending to be alive, just like I once was. At least we know it's not us. And we actually know who exactly it is. Slowly shuffled back toward the nurse's station, trembling. Who could it be? The nurse? Satria? I'm alive, aren't I? I mean, that is freaky enough where you start questioning your own existence. Or maybe Mrs. Molyono was just trying to scare me. 3 bells rang at once. 108, 101, and 105. Okay, we're not gonna go to Mr. X at all. And empty room's fine. We'll go 101. We know what's happening with Angela and Mrs. Liam. A ghost child is knocking at their window and trying to get the Tic Tac mom to be completely signaled. Suddenly, room 108's door swung open violently. How come this happens now? This didn't happen before. Mr. X, with his wild eyes and disheveled hair, burst out, throwing away all of his medical equipment as if it were poison. Okay, this is... He runs... I guess he runs up to the 5th floor and jumps out. He dies. Is this how it ends just because Mr. Molyono and Mrs. Selvina didn't have like full endings? Because this is the second time this happened. We haven't interacted with him at all. But during Angela's, we didn't interact with him really either. And none of this happened. Yeah. So we see his. We're going to get to Mr. Molyono's. So Mr. Molyono has no ending? It's just the, hey, one of you is a ghost. The end. I'm curious what happens if we go through Molyono's the same way and at the end go to Mr. X's room, because it does ring. And instead of him being able to run out like an asshole, we can find out if we can stop him. So we're gonna click through real quick. Because there is no skip and there's no save. And the auto load. Actually, maybe if we get something. Today is the 8th. Maybe this is it. We'll go here. Well, at least we're a lot farther in. We'll do 110 and then 108. At least it's less clicking. Because this is how we find out that Mrs. Molyono is a ghost and that one of us is a ghost with her. And we found out who it is. It's Satria, because we've seen his endings where he's gone dead and where he's gone to heaven. All right, let's see what happens when we stop by Mr. X's room. I pressed the intercom button on room 108. Good evening, sir. It's Dr. Leah. What's going on in there? A long unsettling silence followed, broken only by the humming of ventilators. I was about to repeat myself when a garbled voice came through the speaker. She's inside me. His voice cracked with pain and something else. Fear, maybe? Her hands scratching. Okay, this is his start. His voice was louder, frantic. I could hear the sounds of him thrashing in his bed, the bed frame creaking under the force. You don't understand, it's her. Her nails, I can feel them. Digging. Sir, just breathe, okay? I'm coming in to check on you. You have to stay still, alright? No reply, just a wheezing laugh cracked through the intercom, making the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. Reached the door of room 108, bringing the sedatives with me. Suddenly, everything was eerily quiet. Groggily, I glanced down the hall, hoping to ask for assistance from Satria or the nurse, but I was alone. I took a deep breath, steeling myself as I opened the door to room 108. I should have let Satria take this one. Okay, so this is the same as a start with him. I'm curious what happens after this. Because he keeps saying she's coming. He's sedated now. Because I backed out of the room trying to calm my trembling hands. But then as I started down the hallway, something stopped me in my tracks. This is the singing part. Weird violin that crescendos. Okay. All right, so we have to go to him. What's going on? Can you check my husband? One moment, please. I'll be right there. When I stepped in, the familiar unsettling sight of Mrs. Moliono greeted me. Only this time she looked ghostly. Her feet were still completely off the floor, just hovering. Okay, we're gonna redo Mrs. Salvina and go check on him during after the midnight. Check on Mr. X, because I think there's more story there. I swallowed hard, pushing the fear and unease down as best as I could. Your husband's vitals seem stable, but he's recovering well. Thank God. I was so afraid. I don't think I could ever leave him. Her voice quivered, and for a moment I could almost forget she was a ghost. It was just a woman, clinging to the memory of the man she loved. I died of cancer just 3 months ago. It wasn't quick, it dragged on. It took everything from me. I didn't think he could ever recover from that, and we don't have any children to accompany him when I'm gone. I stood there, silent, unsure of what to say. We wanted kids. But when it became clear that it wasn't going to happen, I thought he would leave. But he never did. He said he married me for me, not for children. That's what he told me. Oh, my dearest, when I got sick, he took care of me every single day. Never complained, never once made me feel like a burden. He was always my rock, right until the very end. And now he's all alone. I should have been there for him. But instead, he's left alone without me. Lots of aura, Fancy. All I want now is to repay him for everything. Just to make sure he's all right. That's all I need before I can go. I can finally let go. As I stood there, she's still trying to process everything. Mrs. Moyle's ghostly figure floated a little closer. Doctor, can you promise me something? Promise me you'll make sure he gets better. That's not music from the game. If you guys could hear that. That's my neighborhood. I hesitated. There was no way I could make that kind of promise. Healing wasn't something I could guarantee. I can't promise he'll get better, but I can promise you that I'll do everything I can. I'll give it my hardest. That's the best I can do. For a moment, she didn't say anything, just looked at me. That's good enough for me. Oh, is she going? Suddenly, warm, bright light surrounded her. It wasn't the usual eerie glow that accompanied her before. It was softer, more peaceful. I watched as she slowly faded into the light, her form dissolving into nothingness. She was gone, just like that. I then heard a groan from the bed. Mr. Moyono was waking up. He looked around, confused. Doctor? What's going on? I had the strangest dream. You're fine, Mr. Miliano. Your anesthesia is wearing off. Is that so? I dreamt of my wife. She was here with me. But she's dead, Doctor. Could I be hallucinating? Was that the sedatives? I felt a lump in my throat, but I smiled back at him and shook my head. As I turned to leave, Mr. Miliano's voice stopped me. Thank you for everything. I hope my wife can see how well you're all taking care of me here. I paused for a moment, glancing toward the empty space where Mrs. Miliano had been only moments ago. I'm sure she knows. The bells ring again. Okay. 102 has nobody, 104. We'll go 104. Because we'll just go through this. The scratching stuff. The broom. Did I visit her once tonight? Because this is like one of the second or third time. Okay, we're gonna check on Mr. X. He was retching, his voice even more frantic and broken than before. Cut through the noise. She's out! She's out, but I can still hear her. She's here. Help! Sir, I'll be in a... Ah! Sir? You hear it too, don't you, Doctor? I don't know what kind of voice to give this fuck. As I listened, something else crept in, something familiar. A Pessenden song. Soft at first, like a lullaby from hell, getting louder and closer with each second. The song drowned out Mr. X's screaming. The hairs on my neck stood on end as her voice wound through the static. It inched closer and closer, until it felt like she was right here in the nurse station, instead of Mr. X's room. I can't do this alone. Yeah, that's right. Bring the nurse. The eerie wails from Mr. X still echoed in my ears as we rushed down the dimly lit hallway. When we burst into the room, the bed was empty. The song had also stopped. Sir? I looked at the window, but it seemed like it was jammed shut. Over there. The nurse pointed at Mr. X, cowering under the bed, his wide eyes glinting with terror. Sir, what are you doing under there? I knelt down, trying to see him better. I forgot that she screamed. Ow! Before I could get an answer, the nurse beside me let out a blood-curdling scream. She stumbled back, clutching her foot, eyes wide with fear. Doctor, something's scratching me. It's under the floor, scratching me. A cold chill ran down my spine. The scratching, the horrible feeling from earlier was back. And it wasn't just in my head, the nurse felt it too. Whatever was down there, it wasn't done with us yet. But helping Mr. X came first. I had to sedate him. Mr. X was trembling under the bed, his eyes darting around like he was seeing something I couldn't. I injected the sedative into his arm, trying to ignore everything else while the nurse cowered behind me. Just breathe. His eyes fluttered closed as the drug took effect. I turned towards the nurse. Are you okay? My mom said being a nurse is an honorable profession. I'm just here for the paycheck. It's okay. He's asleep. Let's get out. As I turned to leave, the silence was shattered by that haunting sound again. The Pessenden song. I didn't wait to see what would happen next. Let's go already. Bolt, out of there. Gone. I'd leave too. The nurse grabbed me by the arm. We bolted out of the room, the songs echoing behind us, like it was chasing us down the hallway as we fled back to the nurse's station. I didn't even realize that the corridor had somehow become even darker than before. We didn't stop until we were back in the dim safety of the station, gasping for air. The song had faded, but whatever was happening in room 108, it was far from over. Satria was there. He raised an eyebrow when he saw us running, but didn't ask anything. Satria, do you know anything about Mr. X's background? I mean, beside the obvious nightmare we just dealt with. Satria leaned back, his eyes fixed out the ceiling. There's a rumor that he used to be filthy rich. But you know, classic tale, lost everything, bad investments, gambling, drug addiction, who knows? Really? How come? When they found him, he had this ridiculously expensive watch on him. Like the kind you could pay off a car. No one's sure if he stole it or if it was his, but it was the only thing he had left. We keep hearing a gambling song and someone singing. Satria didn't even blink, just shrugged with that exasperating nonchalance. Maybe it's a vengeful lover haunting him, or his ex-wife, who knows? Or maybe the music's just in his head, and now it's in yours too. There's no way. Either way, it's absolutely none of our business. I couldn't tell if he was being serious or just messing with us. But either way, it did nothing to calm the two of us. This is way above my pay grade. And I'm not even getting paid. Satya just smiled, an infuriatingly calm smile, and witteredly reached to the counter and poured 2 cups of tea. He handed one to the nurse and one to me. Here, drink up. It'll help calm your nerves. The nurse and I exchanged a glance, still too rattled to do anything. Finally, I took a sip anyway, trying to shake off my doubts and fear. The nurse did the same. If Satra could be this relaxed, maybe we could survive the rest of the night, or maybe he was just crazy as this place. The bells ring again. Just room 104. Interesting. Mrs. Selvey, no, she was unconscious. She couldn't have been her, right? Flinging the door open. Okay, this is Mrs. Selvey's ghost part, where she dies. We've been through this, so we'll continue on. The faint sobbing because she's crying. We brought her to the morgue. She gets the photo. Room 108. I pressed the intercom for room 108 and something was different. This time, his voice was calm. It's over, Doc. I rushed to his room. Where I got there, my stomach dropped. Mr. X had disconnected all his equipment, the monitors flatlining behind him. He stood by the window, trying to pry it open, hands trembling with determination. Sir, what are you doing? He didn't answer, just kept fumbling with the window latch like a possessed man. The room felt colder, heavier, and then I heard it. The peasant hen singing again. The haunting melody slithered through the air, growing louder. And just like that, she appeared, her figure materializing in the room, moving closer with every note. She was beautiful in the most unsettling way. Her smile wide, her eyes dark and empty. Mr. X whipped around, pointing at her with a trembling hand. You're dead! This isn't real! You're not real! But the woman only smiled wider. A slow, creeping smile that spread to her ears, contorting her face into something grotesque and inhuman. Her eyes locked onto him, and the air in the room felt like it was being sucked out. No! This isn't real! The woman stepped closer, still seeing. She raised a hand toward him, her fingers curling like she was about to claim him. And she whispered, Godindra? Gondindra. Fatima? Her smile widened even further, condensed with malice, and I'm gonna think that means that they meant to put dripping with venom. I don't think dripping with venom is a thing. Before I could react, her hand shot out, wrapping around his throat. Mr. Godindra's eyes bulged as he gasped for air, his hands clawing frantically at her grip. Stop! I screamed, rushing forward, trying to pull her off him. But as I grabbed, she turned, her face twisting into something horrific. Her beautiful features morphed into a monstrous figure. Her eyes were now black pits, mouth too wide for her face, and with sharp, jagged teeth. The air grew thick with the stench of decay. I can't read that. I'm gonna try. Hidep Nanglungkwen Abdi Ayuna Hidep Kudumaya Argentina. I totally butchered the shit out of that. She tightened her grip around his throat, and Godindra's face turned a sickening shade of blue. I yanked at her arm, but it was like trying to move a large rock. Mr. Godindra's choked gasps filled the room, his eyes begging for mercy, but the ghost, Fatima, or whatever she had become, only laughed. I fumbled for the intercom, my hands shaking, and pressed the button, barely managing to croak out the words, "Help! Anybody!" Within moments, Satria burst into the room, prayer beads in one hand and a small pouch of salt in the other. Without a word, he threw the salt across the room, grains catching in the air like tiny sparks. The ghost woman, Fatima, screeched, an ear-piercing wail that made my skin crawl. Her monstrous figure twisted and contorted as if the very air was burning her. With one last deafening shriek, she vanished, leaving behind nothing but an icy chill in the room. Mr. Godindra's slumped to the floor, gasping for breath, his body trembling. Great. Satria, unfazed, tucked the prayer beads back into his pocket, wiping his hands on his scrubs like he'd just taken out the trash. Use hand sanitizer. Don't just wipe your hands on your clothes when you throw out garbage. That just makes your clothes dirty. I rushed to Mr. Contra's side as Satria administered his meds, and he was already calming down once more. We carried him back to his bed. Satria, she said, Hidap Nangluklan, something kudu mayar gantina. What does that even mean? Satria's face darkened, his usual sarcasm replaced by a grim seriousness. Probably, you offered me up. Now you have to pay the price. That woman, she might have been a tumbal, a sacrifice in some kind of ritual. Sacrifice? She was my girlfriend. I used her for a ritual to get rich. I didn't think she'd come back. Wait, that's your worry? You used her in a ritual to get rich, and your worry was thinking that she'd come back, not the fact that you sacrificed your girlfriend to try and get yourself rich, you piece of shit. My blood ran cold. This wasn't just a ghost. This was revenge. No, everything's going wrong. I think everything's going right because, you sacrificed a person for your own personal gain. I've lost everything. Just leave me alone. I don't need all those injections. Satria just shook his head. It's our job to treat you, sir. Whatever you did in the past, you need to atone for it. Without waiting for an argument, Satria quickly administered a sedative. Mr. Godindra's lids fluttered as he drifted off into unconsciousness. You've got a lot more to answer for when you wake up. Okay, he deserves whatever he gets. As we stepped out of the room, I couldn't shake the weight of what just happened. I never thought something like that still exists in this day and age. His own girlfriend? What kind of person does that? People will do anything for money. Curious, I pulled out my phone and Googled Ganindra's name. The thing is, she was probably, most likely, definitely unwilling to be part of that ritual. I kind of want to see that game, honestly. Just from her perspective. What I found out sent chills down my spine. He was some sort of CEO for a startup, living the high life. I stumbled upon his social media, filled with pictures of him and a woman named Fatima. They looked so happy. Well, before everything went south, that is. It felt wrong to see those smiling faces now, knowing what happened. This dude had it all. I can't believe it. Yeah, now he's left to atone for his mistakes. Mr. X lives. It was finally 6 a.m., the end of my first grueling night shift. I was ready to head home, barely able to keep my eyes open when I noticed Satria standing by the exit. His silhouette framed by the morning sun, almost different somehow. He waved me over with a faint smile. Yo, kid, thanks for everything. Sure, I didn't do much. Yeah, but still, thanks. Okay, you sound like you're saying goodbye. There's still more shifts in the future. Nah, you won't see me again after today. Take care of yourself, alright? Before some reason that sound effects always gets me. It reminds me of like a chrono trigger sound effect. Usually either like a teleport or some kind of like sci-fi thing that was in that game. It just hits me that way. Before I could ask what he meant, he gave me a final wave, stepping into the sunlight. And then just like that, he was gone. No footsteps fading, no doors closing, just gone. I stood there, my mind spinning, and I imagined it. The night had been long, sure, but this felt strange. Everything can wait later. For now, bed. As I collapsed onto my couch, still thinking about Satria's strange words, I mindlessly scrolled through my phone. That's when I saw it. Satria Dominic, a medical resident, dies in a motorcycle accident at 7 p.m. last night. Wait a minute. But we were working together at 9 p.m., weren't we? He was still alive then, right? I scrolled through the comments, heart pounding. People were mourning him, talking about how kind he was, etc. But if he died last night, then who was with me on that shift? A chill crept up in my spine as I replayed our final conversation in my mind. His calm words, the way he disappeared into the sunlight. Was it real? Had I just worked an entire shift with Satria's ghost? I leaned back and closed my eyes, whispering a solemn prayer out for Satria. For his peace and his journey, wherever it was now taking him. Satria had worked as hard only to be lost to the very grind he had struggled against. I sighed, staring out into the early morning light, unsure of what the future would bring. I wondered if I would end up like him. One thing was certain though, I would never forget him. And I would never forget this odd night shift at the ICU. Normal ending. Selvi epilogue. Well, I don't need the Selvi epilogue. We've gone through the Selvi epilogue. I was convinced it's more of a Mr. Mognono epilogue. Or Molyono? Molyono. Mr. X epilogue. Okay. I sat on my couch watching TV. It had been a few weeks since Mr. X, or Ganindra, had been released from the hospital. The news had reported his imprisonment for drug trafficking, and I've never heard about him since. Wait, what's this? In a tragic development, Ganindra Sanjaya was found dead in his prison cell earlier today. The cause of death is currently unknown, but sources say there was a woman's handprint around his neck when his body was discovered. I felt a chill run down my spine. Fatima. Had she truly claimed him in the end? The screen displayed a picture of Mr. X alongside a beautiful woman. The anchor continued detailing how Ganindra's fall from grace had shocked the community. People had once admired him as a successful CEO, and no one knew how he became a drug addict. Still, he had made choices that led him down his path. And it was hard to pity someone who hurt his girlfriend for wealth. Did Fatima find him at last, reclaiming what she had lost, or was it a manifestation of his guilt? I guess I would never know. Alright, honestly, if he sacrificed his girlfriend to become rich, and the richness he found was drug trafficking, he could have just went straight to the drug trafficking without sacrificing his girlfriend. And I'd like to think that Fatima came back and choked the shit out of him because he deserves it. Because he's a piece of shit. Anyway, this is what I was looking for. A Joko epilogue. Mr. Joko Molyono returned to the hospital for his follow-up, and after his appointment, came over to me in the hallway. He was holding a beautifully decorated music box. Dr. Leah, I just wanted to thank you for everything. My wife, she loved this music box. It was her favorite. And I'd like to give it to you. Mr. Molyono, I really don't know what to say. He smiled gently, holding out the box. It's fine, Doctor. She always said it brought her peace. I think she'd want someone like you to take care of it. I don't have any children to pass it to anyway. I carefully took the music box from him. I'll treasure it, I promise. You know, when I first met her, I never imagined how much she'd change my life. We didn't have children, but we had each other. And that's enough for me. I hope one day you find someone who loves you as much as she loved me. His words hung in the air and I felt a lump in my throat. Thank you. He gave me one last smile before turning to leave. As I stood there with the music box in my hands, I could feel all the memories in it held. It made me think about the kind of life I want to build too. I thought there was more after she says that. Okay, so the best way to play this is either play Angela's storyline or play everyone else's simultaneously. I'm kind of curious if there's more Mr. X stuff, so we're gonna do a quick click through on that. Because I feel like there could be more Mr. X if we start the night with him, unless it just gives us more routes once we start dealing with Mr. X. So I'm gonna do a quick click through on that. Even though he's an asshole. He is just a piece of shit. Like seriously. How could you betray someone that much just to get wealthy? And then do it by drug trafficking, apparently. He could have, if he was gonna be a selfish son of a bitch, he could have just left the girl and become a drug trafficker instead of sacrificing her life in some ritual. I'm gonna also click quickly through like his portions in there, because we can get directly to the place we left off where she chokes him and Satria, which is interesting. Satria has like two places where he has good endings. And it's if you deal directly with Mr. X and if you deal with Angela mostly. If you don't deal with Mr. X though, it seems like we go directly into seeing his like accident self. Okay, for this we'll go Sylvina. We'll go Sylvina and Mr. X. I just want to keep Angela's storyline out of it, because apparently if you play Angela's storyline, you just get Angela's storyline. Even if you like miss a bell. I do wish there were more places you could make choices about like how you help the patients in the end. 'Cause so far, Angela's is the only one that shows a choice for like how to help and deal with their situation. Okay. Okay, no, this is the one where we bring the nurse, I think. Yeah. This is the one where we bring the nurse and we can feel the scratching through the floor. And I forget that she screams. Because it hurts my ears every freaking time. I'm not ready for it. Okay. So then we get the tea from Satria. Who's just a handsome man, isn't he? I mean, the bag's under his eyes. You can deal with it. Okay, more room 108. He's calm. No. Yeah, this is the part where he gets choked, right? Yeah. Yeah, she gets hit with salt, disappears. This is where we left off. So any other room 108 after this is pretty much what we're going to deal with and see if there's more, so we can learn more about their story. Unless this is it. There's no more room 108. If there's no more room 108, then we're kind of done with the game. Okay, he lives. Okay. Mr. Joko's room. We're gonna get through the whole thing just to see if we do get another room 108, but it seems like his is done because he lived. And I guess we just go directly to his epilogue. This is the part where she's creepy. No. This is not the super creepy part. Wow, you get 4 rooms on that one. Okay, so it just gives you more. Because we'll get to the part where she's creepy as heck. Then she explains her story because we know she's a ghost. And then Mr. Moyono wakes up. Oh no, we don't. We'll go 11 because I'm just gonna not touch Miss Selby's storyline. And this is Gendry, who's watching over the whole entire ward. All right, she explains herself. This isn't where he wakes up, right? Or is it? Okay, she fades away. He does wake up. And we'll get his epilogue along with the rest of the story, I guess. I wonder, could you actually do every single storyline? No, I don't think you can. Because we're going with Gendry's now. Yeah, we woke up. Okay. So it's only if you do the empty room stuff where Satri gets a not so great ending. Because in this one, he actually goes into the light. And as long as you deal with all the other storylines except for the Gendry storyline completely. Yeah, so we get the same epilogue. All right. This was cool. It was a very interesting game. I like the art a lot. It does remind me a lot of Paranormicite. Good game. A lot of interesting stories. I like how well written it is, especially after a bunch of nights of playing horror games that aren't really written that well. And I do want to make my own game with good writing. And I don't know, because I could definitely see doing, because I've done visual novels before. Back like in college, I'd make visual novel games with Flash, so it shouldn't be that hard to learn and do in like Unreal once I learn the Unreal Engine. So I could go with this style where it's all story and just a few choices and we can make sprites. Or I could actually go with like something like a Chill's art style game where they tell a story while having like a 3D game experience, which has always been interesting to me. That's one of the reasons I like most of the Chill's art games. Some of them have not been as great story-wise, and like the mechanics-wise, they tried too much and they didn't really execute well. And I don't really want to tell stories the same way as certain other game developers where it's a very horror slasher film story. I kind of want a little more depth in it with like kind of like how these games deliver. So we'll see once I'm able to develop my own game, because I will one time, at least once, probably multiple times, because it actually seems really fun. And I do like telling stories, which is why I like doing short films, which I'm going to do a lot more on my own channel, as well as do more edited videos. But for today, that was Intensive Scare Unit. I want to thank you all for coming by, hanging out, checking out the channel, checking out the stream. I do want to do more editing because like I could play games like this and throw in more zhuzh, pizzazz, make it I guess funnier in certain places. Or I like editing, that's the main thing. But I already said thank you, so I'll see y'all next time. Y'all have a good day or night, depending on where you are. It could be 5 p.m., 6 p.m., or even like midnight or something. But y'all take care now. Later.